Hey everybody, welcome back to Out of the Ordinary with Jay. And I've got a special guest here named Luhan. And Luhan, I like to give the audience some context, a little bit about, where the answers and ideas are coming from. So do you mind, how old are you?
77.
Okay, and where were you sort of born and raised?
Born in north side of Chicago.
Okay.
Grew up in Skokie, Illinois.
Okay.
And I think all the time till I went off to college.
Okay. You do me a favor, will you move your microphone up some?
Okay.
There's some background noise and I'm hoping if it's closer it'll catch better.
Okay.
So our conversation today, I think, will be a fun one about, that's a good spot. Yep.
Okay.
We're going to talk at some length about people generally.
Okay.
I'm a person, you're a person. There's all kinds of different people, some old, some young, different cultures, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. So we're just going to talk about people generally. And I'm going to start with just the most generic of questions. What do you think about people?
They're probably the most difficult thing to understand. And I do a lot of physics, science, electronics. Okay. People are complicated.
Okay.
And it's more of an art than a science, I think, to understand people.
Okay, and why do you say that? Like, what makes you think that they're complicated?
Well, because the more of them I meet, the more versions of people there are. Now, of course, after a while in life, you make certain generalizations.
Right.
So when I meet somebody, are they introvert? Are they extrovert? Are they friendly? Are they angry about something? And I try to connect with people on whatever level I can match them on.
Right, that's probably a good way to try and engage people. But yeah, it's weird. I kind of go back and forth on the issue myself of people being complicated and complex or being like very simple. And I think it's sort of both. Like, sometimes it's just about, shelter, food, and reproduction. And it's pretty basic. And then other times, people aren't what they appear to be. We've got everything from, Gandhi to psychopaths, and
yes,
what I mean? And
there's a lot of variation.
So it's just so super interesting.
But I did solve one problem, I think, in my 30s.
Okay.
How to get people to accept me.
How to get people to accept you?
Yes.
Ooh, let's hear this. I think a lot of people could find that.
And here it is. I don't wait for them. I accept them. Almost nobody rejects you if you accept them. So I do the initial thing. I let them feel accepted and fine with me. And now I don't even worry about what's coming back.
I got you. So you take it to them. You don't wait.
That's right.
Right.
Because I think all of us were waiting. What do other people think,
I think that is in large part true, right? In other words, I'll make you okay with me or you'll get to know me because I'm going to put forth the effort first, and then you'll have to react to that, and the most likely outcome is you're going to react positively.
And I've accepted people that were very strange in many ways. We may get into some of that.
Right. Give me 1 second here. I want to... Okay, so back to where we were talking about what do you think about people. So I guess like in that sort of context, you're a person. How would you describe yourself?
Atypical.
What does that mean?
Well, some people might say abnormal because I'm way out of the mainstream in a lot of different ways.
Okay.
But I don't want to put a negative connotation on. I'll just say, okay, I'm atypical. Nobody said, oh, you're just like so-and-so. I've never had that happen yet. Okay. So, okay, I'm atypical. But that doesn't stop you from being a nice person, making friends, and doing things.
So, yeah, I think, that's another sort of interesting thing about human nature is I think a lot of times people want to stand out, and other times they want to blend.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of a unique
back in high school, people worried about whether they were okay.
Oh, my gosh,
You weren't weird or something.
Oh, it's like if they could have given everybody like a chart of like, hey, this will allow you to fit in the easiest, people would have gone through every checkbox.
Oh, yeah.
Except for maybe like one or two people.
Now, I was with a group in my high school, kind of eclectic group.
Okay.
We met each other in a study hall. We found we liked to play guitar. We used to get together, sing. All we did was get together, smoke cigarettes, drink beer, play cards, and talk about all the women that we were going to get. Now, I thought someplace there's a bunch of women who are doing the same thing, wondering where we are.
Well, they were probably doing things like playing cards, doing their nails, and figuring out how to best avoid all you guys.
Maybe so. I don't know. None of us, I think, dated until we got out of high school.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. Yeah.
So I was a very shy person.
Which is pretty interesting because you don't appear to be very shy now.
That's because I did things to overcome it.
So it was a purposeful endeavor to make what you considered a change that you wanted to see.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, really? And there's whole stories about Est and Sage.
So what's a recommendation you would give to someone that wants to be a little more, to put themselves out there a little more?
Well,
do you have an idea? First of all, do you consider it a good, like you're glad you did it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then what would your advice be to somebody that maybe was like, you know what, I should put myself out there more, but I'm a little afraid?
Well, the mechanisms I use, like the Est seminar, may not still exist. Mm-hmm. What it is, it's an intensive type of therapy that you can get a lot done in a weekend.
I think they do still have things like that. They're named in different things, but they're, you know, different sort of motivational speakers. I think one was called Landmark. That might have been the era.
Oh yeah, Landmark.
But I think those things still exist. But describe the idea of that whole thing.
Well, what they do is usually we mature not through time, but we mature by interacting with the external world, mostly people. Right. Okay, so they accelerate that by making you do things you never wanted to do.
Right.
Okay, there's a line of women over there. I want you to walk in front of one and ask to go out with her. And she's got to accept or reject you in front of a room of 100 people.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. We want you to stand up in front of this group in your underwear.
Wow.
I mean, they're hardcore. Intense. But it works. It makes changes.
Yeah, they call that, they do that. I cannot remember the name of it in psychology, but they do that now. I think it's like ERP or something, but it's exposure response therapy.
Okay.
But the idea is, so for people that are whatever, you know, you're scared of spiders, right?
Yeah.
They'll introduce you to one spider and then 10 spiders, and then you'll have to sit with a bunch of spiders, and you know what I mean? So this is a common psychological tool that is used.
And I did for 2 years. I signed up for various versions and advanced versions of those courses. There were two of them. Sage, which had more to do with emotional things, and Est and Forum, which had more to do with the intellectual side. And I did, I don't know, a dozen over a 2-year period. And I didn't actually like doing the seminars because they're a pain in the ass. But I get home on Monday morning and I could hardly remember what life was like on Friday when I went in.
I have had some experience, or had some friends that have had some experiences with some of those things.
Yeah.
And it depends on who I talk to. Some of them will regard it as very positive, a little unnerving, but very positive. Others will say it felt a little culty, and so it kind of freaked them out a little bit. But to me, the benefit that I see to things like that, or going to a psychologist or motivational speakers, things like that, is it seems like when people spend their hard-earned dollars from their paycheck to put it into something, they're more apt to do it than, say, just watch a video or read a book. I mean, maybe this video will do it for you. I don't know. But when you put your real money into it,
it's not.
You're invested.
That's not the biggest thing.
Okay, what is?
You agree with this group, in a group of 100 people, to stay through the weekend and do what they ask you to do with no knowledge of what that will be.
Right.
So it's this commitment to the group.
I see.
It's almost like being in the army with your army buddies or something. And there's a great I've made a lot of friends through that, because you get a connection with other people. Somebody
didn't make it though, right? Somebody bounced, commitment or otherwise, right? Did anybody leave?
We had one guy, and it was an advanced seminar, which was really hardcore, like up all night screaming and stuff.
Oh. Now that actually sounds fun.
And he left when we took all our clothes off at a point. He was a minister, and that freaked him out.
That would,
we got a letter from him the next day.
He's the only one that left during that?
Yes, the only one.
But see, this is...
And we got a letter from him the next day, because that was Saturday. And Sunday, we got a letter of him apologizing for letting us down, because he had promised to stay with us. Yeah.
But see, that's where I could see some of the criticism coming, not to get a tangent on this, but like, you know, if you say, I'm committed to this endeavor, not knowing what it is, but then some things are thrown at you that are just too wildly uncomfortable, I think it's okay to hit the Panic button? No.
Oh, yeah, and I already decided. I actually turned down the firewalk.
Yeah. Okay.
And they were just leading people out with no preparation, and I didn't like that.
Okay. So
and
there you go.
I said, okay, no. And I just refused, and that was fine with them.
Yeah, I think it's good to push boundaries to a point of,
because
not growth, not uncomfortable.
I wouldn't mind discomfort. I was worried about threat to my well-being.
Worried about your foot catching on fire?
Yeah, something like that.
So what do you find? I mean, one of the reasons why I do this channel is because I find people so interesting, and because a lot of us are receiving so much of the same sensory information from the outside world, and then we interpret it so differently, and I find that kind of fascinating on how we deal with it. But what do you find interesting about people?
What things do I find interesting?
Yeah, about people. What do you find
about
interesting
people?
Yeah. About people.
Actually, I tend to rate people on how far out of the norm they are, and the farther the better.
Okay.
But not people who are totally off their nut. In other words, how far can you go out from a very conventional view of reality and still maintain your equilibrium and your sense of reason? And I can get into that with some of my experiences where I'm way outside of anything that's supposed to be real.
Right.
But I still apply logic and mathematics and everything to interpret it. So I tend to judge people on how sold they are to what they're being, just taught, rote memory, and how far they've escaped from that.
All right. So I'm going to get into it a little bit on this subject. I was probably going to save for another video with you, but what we're talking about is sort of established conventions and things like that, right? And if I'm hearing you correctly, it seems like you are appreciative, or at least fond of, those that are a little bit outside the norm or a little unconventional.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, because it appalls me how many people just buy into whatever they were told.
Right.
And when in the Army, of course, they try to do that deliberately.
Yes.
But it didn't quite work for me. I never felt that they had actually made me buy in. Every time they'd order me to do something, I'd think about it and think, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Right. You wouldn't just follow directive instantly.
No.
See, the counter to this idea, and I hear you, and I appreciate, I don't know how to say, uniqueness and difference very much so. But I also see the value in convention and in conventional and cultural norms. As an example, that's in my view, that's what gave us, laws and civilization and things like that. In
fact, that's a big thing I would like to talk about at a point here. Because why does our society imbue us with our own internal sense of reality, not like something you learn, but like something you absorb so that it's never questioned? And I think the reason for that is, if you've got these groups of people in very ancient times, it was more important that they thought the same than that any of them were smarter or righter than the others, because they had to act as a group. So if they believed that the god was a male and had a large head and pointed ears or something, but they all believed it made them more work together. So that has a pro-survival, and those things, that's why it's so strong today. That's why our culture makes us think we're right and all the other cultures are wrong.
Yes. Yeah, no, I get that. And I think that, I think civilization is far enough along now, particularly with like computers and the use of AI and things, where they should be able to stripe, okay, what has worked the best throughout human history, what has worked the worst throughout human history, and make that some, sort of like baseline agreed upon, whatever, this much education, this much, so on and so forth, this much for this type of diet, this type of exercise, sort of a baseline. And then from there, that's the conventional, that's the culture. And then from there, let people kind of do their own thing. But in other words, like in the business world, it would be best practices. Yeah. Right? Some
balance between the convention. Now, some of the best doctors I've seen are a little bit outside just the conventional medicine. That is, they're not violating any laws or anything, but they're saying, well, hold it. Many of my patients took this instead of this, and it worked better.
Yeah.
So why don't we give you this, even though the AMA doesn't differentiate them. In other words, yes, you start with a solid base. Now I do technology. That's as cut and dried as you get.
Yep.
This resistor goes here,
Zeros and ones.
and that one goes there. And if you get anything wrong, the thing does not work. So
Right.
I know about that end.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I do think, just from my own perspective, not just my own opinion, is that there are conventions and things that are good. They keep us better educated. They keep us safe.
Sure.
They make the world a little bit more fair.
Uh-huh.
But then there's also a place for, thinking outside of the box and coming up with new ideas and creativity.
Yeah.
And so, but that is an interesting sort of fine line. And it is always the creatives, which is, I'm sure you're more in tune with, that come up with the newest, things from iPhone to music or whatever
I
else.
used to tell companies I work for, I'll come up with a lot of cool ideas. You better have somebody else look them over before you do them. Okay, because I generate them very well, but you need other people to say, okay, I think we can do that. And I work well with people that way.
Yeah. That's cool. I have a lot of ideas too. That's why I tell everybody when they meet me, I'm like, I am so full of it. So what behavior just baffles you about people? What is a behavior that people do that just is baffling? You just do not get how that happens.
I'm not sure there is any anymore.
What do you mean by that?
I seldom, not even just people, but the world in total, I am seldom surprised at anything that happens anymore. None of it seems out of line. Well, it's good or it's bad. Yeah, it may be horrible for some people, but I'm seldom surprised anymore.
Sadly, I have to agree with you. I do agree with you. And I think part of the reason for that, I'm just going to go a little tangent here, but I think large part of that, the internet was supposed to bring this great promise of all the human knowledge we have shared with everybody.
Okay.
I don't think it accounted for things like Facebook and Reddit and Opinion and The Onion and all these, things like that. And so, I could pick literally any topic about any medication, any food, any idea,
Yes.
and I can find something that will support 100% that I'm right, or 100% that I'm completely wrong.
That's
and
right.
and it could even be from fairly reputable looking sources.
Yeah.
And that's the tragedy of it, is now there's no sort of universal agreement on so many things that used to be commonplace. And so that's why I think we can't get surprised anymore, because anybody can now point to that's I remember back in the day, you might have one guy in the whole town. I grew up in a small town. You might have one kind of really bonkers idea, and you're like, oh, that's our town goofball. That's the village idiot, right? Well, now he can get on Facebook and find 200,000 just like him, and now all of a sudden they have a movement, right?
Well,
and that's different than it used to be.
I've resolved that myself.
Okay.
And here's how I've resolved it. Before there was all this mass media and the internet and everybody could talk to everybody, there were only narrow information channels.
Right.
These 3 networks plus PBS plus the Encyclopedia Britannica plus medical reference books. And now there's all this other stuff. So what I've gone back to saying is, what's the source of this information? Right back to those ones I trusted in the first place.
Right.
In other words, it's not like...
But it's a challenging time for this.
Well, I think a lot of people that watch a YouTube video and how they rate the guy talking is how big his microphone is.
Yes.
It's a really big microphone. He looks so professional.
Dang it. I have this tiny little microphone.
We got little microphones.
Let me zoom in there.
Yeah.
By the way, there's my channel, at OOTOWJ, which stands for at Out of the Ordinary with J. And there's my thumbs up, so please hit the thumbs up.
Okay.
And by the way, I wrote this in permanent marker on white tape, and it's like I'm getting inhaling the permanent marker, and it's messing me up, so it's kind of funny. I've been inhaling for about the last half hour. I will tell you something that baffles me about people that I'd like to get see what you think of. But one of the things that baffles me the most about people is, and I'm going to say this slightly wrong, but is the way that we do so much self-harm and don't get out of our own way. As an example, almost everybody can give anybody else really good advice that they themselves will not take in that exact same situation. And it's just baffling to me how, talk about the internet and news or whatever, stuff like that, how we can intake something and it's bad for us, but we go with it anyway. Like it's just weird to me how we do so many things that are counter to our own well-being. That blows my mind.
Well, yeah, you're talking about like health things like cigarettes,
You name anything we ingest from news and information to smoking and food. It just blows my mind how we'll know something's not good for us, and yet we'll like deceive ourselves or whatever, or we'll do it anyways. And yet if somebody else does it, we're critical. Like it's a very bizarre.
See, I don't think and I count myself in with everybody else. I don't think we're 100% rational beings. I think we're like 90% or 75%. So I have to account for that myself, you know. And I know people, I used to be a heavy drinker for 30 years, bottle of whiskey every night for 30 years.
Okay.
And that's how I slept. I told them I take the active ingredient in Bacardi to sleep. Okay.
Wow.
So now I knew that that wasn't good for me, but I still wanted to drink. So I can know that.
I'm going to throw in something else here. This is literally a little sort of thesis or idea I've been contemplating as of today. I literally wrote this down on a Post-it note at the gym today as a new idea that I wanted to sort of pursue. And so you'll be the first person that I get to talk to about this. And that is that, you know, we all have sort of this inner monologue, right? At least one inner monologue for most people. Some people don't, but most people have at least one inner voice. And then we have sort of actually, let me change. We all sort of have this projection typically that we give of ourselves, and people will view me in a certain way. And then I sort of almost have like this secret identity that hardly anybody knows about, right? I kind of know my, I don't want to call it my dark side, but like, you know, people have this other side to them where they keep secrets, they keep ideas that they don't come out there because they might be criticized for them, right? And I sort of posit this secret identity you and the outward display you as two different people that they work together in some regard, but there also is a lot of conflict. Like as an example, say somebody is, running me off the road in their car. My old lizard brain, might say, "Hey, get out of the car and punch that guy in the face." Yeah. Right. But the rational, frontal lobe is the prefrontal cortex is saying like, no, you could go to jail for that. Maybe he was in a hurry, whatever else. And so there's like this constant battle between what I feel and what is the thinking part doing. And I feel like that conflict is a constant strain and creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of issues. And what do you think about this concept?
That's actually, I hate to tell you, I don't think that's a brand new concept.
Okay, well, it probably isn't. I'm sure I read it somewhere. I read a lot.
But it's, what was it? The id, the ego, the super ego.
Yep, that's it. Yep.
Yeah, the id is that primal thing of fight, flight, love, hate.
The breathing.
And then we have a social conscience on top of that. We're not, I don't think of us as one whole consistent entity as a person. We're a bunch of parts, and some of them are in conflict. Now, what I learned from one of those seminars I did is the reason we get angry, that is triggered when we have two things in our mind that are in conflict, and we don't know we got both of them in there.
Right. And they could both be thinking they're very important, be very amped up about it.
Well, let me give you an example. You may get awfully upset when somebody's late for something, and the other people around you aren't as upset as you. Everybody seems to react differently, but in some other area of your mind, you're being late, but you don't connect the two. This was the premise of a lot of these self-help seminars I took. We're keeping these conflicts inside, and I have gotten through almost all of my anger by resolving those. So here's the last one I resolved. I have an issue with people abusing their authority. I'm mostly thinking of government or big companies. And I think, but the reason it makes me angry, I must be abusing authority. I thought, I never take authority. I always take the bottom level. I'm just a worker. I get along with my coworkers. And that went on for a couple of years. And one day I realized something. With my intellect, I am the authority. And I would think of things and then beat people to a shit intellectually. Now, once you see the two, I'm this and I don't accept this. You can get rid of either one and the problem goes away. You either resolve, I'm not going to behave that way anymore, or I'm going to accept that I'm that way.
Right, but there are cases, right, where you can be outraged or upset about something that have nothing to do with your own internal conflict. In other words, there doesn't have to be a parallel. You could just be like, like I don't know, in the case of like some, somebody's going out there being a mass murderer. I can definitely not like that and want there to be justice. And I'm never contemplating mass murder.
Well, but you may notice that if you line up 10 people and show them the same thing, they won't react exactly the same level.
Right.
So some of them have an element of that somewhere in their lives. They may be squashing bugs, but...
I see. But there has to be situations.
I wonder about that.
Where like, I don't know, take, for instance, Gandhi's outraged at something.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I don't know.
I don't know.
You seem pretty firm that that's a phenomenon.
Well, just because I've gotten rid of virtually all my angry reactions to people.
Right.
Because I kept finding that, here's why it's taught in a seminar situation, locked in a room, because if you tell people, here's what you're angry about, find out the person you hate the most, nail down exactly what you hate about them, and then look for it in yourself. That's what they had us do.
Yeah, I would expect that probably some high amount of times you could find a parallel there. Yeah. I'm just thinking there's got to be times.
I think so too. Somebody's pointing a gun at me, I'll take umbrage to that.
Right.
But see, a lot of this stuff is happening on the other side of the world. It happened 100 years ago. It's some.
But it is interesting, though. I mean, just even baseline. We'll move on to the next topic here. It's like, but the internal conflict of people. I mean, I hear people will even verbalize it to themselves or in their mind, like. Okay, I don't know what to do here, or I really want to do this, but I'll do this. You know what I mean? And it's just interesting that there's a debate going on in our brains about what is the best route on things that, especially, and sometimes, and this is the thing that goes back to what I'm baffled about, is so often we choose the worst option for us.
But see, there's a payoff. When I used to smoke cigarettes, I know it was bad for me, but I wanted a cigarette. So it's
no, there's also there's addiction to that, and it makes it's calming.
Yeah, in other words, there was a good side to it.
Yeah.
And there's a bad side to it.
Yeah.
And it's not irrational to say I've got to figure out what to do here.
That's true.
And usually the good thing is short term, and you want to avoid, and you don't think long term. Like when I tried to quit drinking, it was like, well, I need to quit down on drinking, but I'll have this drink right now.
Right. I'll think about it later. I'm agree with you. The only thing that I'll say is I think like the good thing, I think sometimes the bad thing, the good option or the bad option, I think very often, not all the time, often enough, the bad option is really just change, and people are uncomfortable with change. And it's really, it would be so much to their benefit if they would just make this little move. And instead they don't. And really the biggest downside to it is the slight risk of change or whatever.
And that's why those seminars work, because they force that on you.
Yeah, you're changing too.
They're brutal.
Yeah, right. Well, let's go the other way then. What is something that you find amazing about people?
Mandelbrot set.
What?
Okay. It's a mathematical
Wait, can you say it again, the word?
It's called the Mandelbrot set.
Okay.
Now, you can look it up on YouTube.
Okay.
Mandelbrot set. And what it is it's this tiny little equation. And when you pick spots on a plane and run the equation, all of a sudden, you'll get these different patterns. Now, the equation is z equals z squared plus c. You pick a point on what's called the complex number plane, and you run it. And then you color the spot by how long this equation runs before it goes to infinity. And you give it a color. And you see these swirling patterns. The thing is, when you go to 100-to-1 magnification on one of those points, and just move incrementally, you still get more patterns. And 1,000-to-1, 1,000,000-to-1. They've run it to 100 billion-to-1. And these patterns do not repeat. They're unique. They sometimes look like some of the other ones.
Okay.
And I can't figure out how an equation with like 3 terms can produce an infinite. And I mean, it's like
Yeah.
they don't think there's any end to it. If you watch them, you can watch them zooming in,
Right.
and you can watch for 20 minutes of zooming in, 10 to 1 every second,
Okay.
and the patterns. So I can't get my head around that. How the hell does
Okay.
that work?
So I find that amazing about math.
Okay.
But let me give you an idea about what I mean by amazing about people. Something I
Okay,
want you to find amazing about
okay,
people.
people.
I'll give you an example. This is something that just recently came to me too the other day, and I found it super neat. But because I can be well, you don't know, but anybody watching enough of my videos will know that sometimes I can be pretty critical of people.
Okay.
But I found this to be really sort of positive, and that is, I was talking with a buddy about traveling, and we were talking about solo travel.
Okay.
And I said, it's great to solo travel and see all these neat things, but it's so much better when you're with someone, particularly like if you see a waterfall and you're like, oh, I love that waterfall.
Oh, yeah.
But you know who really loves waterfalls is so-and-so.
Oh.
Or, in other words, and what we sort of were coming to in that little bit of a discussion was sort of a really neat human trait, I think, is that if people really love something or really enjoy something, we want to share it.
Yes.
We're like, hey, have you seen this show? It's amazing. Have you heard this song? It's incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a interesting and really neat human trait, that things that we really bring us joy, we want to share them.
Yes.
So that's sort of...
Do you think that's based on there's an innate thing to want to connect with other people? Because that gives us a connection. Because we're seeing the same thing, getting a similar reaction.
I don't know. Is that your thought on it?
Yeah, because then I don't feel so isolated as an individual and existing in a big world. And I feel that I like that things that make me feel connected to other people. I get into discussions with there's nothing more fun than a group of engineers having a discussion, other than a bunch of 4-year-olds in a new sandbox.
I was going to say, I don't know how I would fare in that group.
But believe me, they get in that place and they're having just a ball with it.
I think I always, for me to answer that question, I always break things down into like the most primal of answers, and so I always go back to species survival. There must be something important about it.
Yep.
About sharing this good joy that has made sense for us to want to share it. And I know a lot of people say like, oh well, it's fun to share and all those things, and all those things may be true, but I just keep asking why until I go all the way back to the beginning.
Is it possible it's just survival? That
maybe
if you had a bunch of people and they had no empathy or interest with each other, and they had to deal with the world, they wouldn't be looking out for each other. But if you have another group of people and they all feel the same about experiences and share their reality, then they're concerned about the others in the group, and that makes you 100 times safer in survival.
Right.
So I think there was a huge survival benefit in having that.
I think there must have been.
Yeah.
So, Lujan, what scares you the most about people? And some of these might be repeats, but we'll go for it anyways. Well, what scares you the most about people?
You'd think the bad thing is some people are really irrational. No, that's not the bad thing.
Irrational.
No, the bad thing is they don't know they're irrational. In other words, they don't have any concept of that.
Yeah.
They're so sure they're right, and they can be in all kinds of weird places, and that because there's no getting to those people. We got a lot of that going on in the world today.
I agree with you, and there's a great quote. I can't remember. I remember the person's name who said it, but I'm going to get the quote wrong. But it says a guy named Charles Bukowski, and he was kind of he had a checkered past for sure.
Okay.
But he ended up being some kind of underground philosopher here in the United States. But I think it was in the U.S. But he had this. I'm going to get this quote so butchered, but he basically says something with the problem with people is that those who, know very, very little and aggressive or whatever, all these things are beaming with confidence. And those with the most intellect are always questioning everything further.
Yes.
And that seems to be quite true and troubling all at the same time.
I worked in a stereo store. I was a technician, but we had several salesmen.
Yeah.
They were all out of the hippie subculture.
Okay.
In fact, they sold marijuana to finance the original storefront. Anyway, after a while, it became very obvious that the guy who knew the least sold the most stereos. He had the least knowledge of it. He would just say, hey, this is a good unit. Well, that's because like last week he was selling used cars. So he doesn't even know stereo. He just, oh, this is a good item here.
Yeah.
And somehow he was pervasive because his mind was uncluttered
Right.
with contradictions.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the amount of, I mean, you can see it play out in so many areas where the amount of competence portrayed by some people, they really don't know what they're talking about, and then other people that very much are, we would consider intellectual or big thinkers or whatever, you know, rather than give a firm, hey, go do this or whatever, like, well, that brings on more questions, right?
Well, now,
and so it's like, you know, anyway, it's pretty interesting.
But if you're in a field that's very hard and fast, engineering, metallurgy, architecture, if it's very hard and fast, the more somebody knows, the more self-assurance they have. In other words, because they know more of the details. If you're in something that's philosophical, theological, even stuff about human nature, the more they know, the less sure they are. So, yes, certainty in certain areas. I want my doctor to be sure of what he's doing.
Right.
You know.
What is concerning is that if you go back, and you look at like leaders, many leaders exhibit the former.
Yes, they do.
You know, there's something in that. In other words, like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take charge here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the more thoughtful individuals are like, well, hold on here. Let's figure this out. And, you know, it's just by the time they're figuring it out, somebody else has already, you know, got a coup going and has a new
That's why you
empire.
got Captain Kirk on one side and Mr. Spock on the other.
Right.
And then for the human emotion, you got Bones. Those are actually the three morphs out of Faust, I think.
Oh, wow.
Those are the three somatotypes.
Very interesting. Okay.
The action, the mental, and the emotional.
Right. And who's the leader?
And supposedly, according to Sheldon's somatotypes, all of us have an integration of those three factors.
But take for instance, what you just used there as an example.
Yeah.
Okay, of the three of those, who's the most wise? It's not Kirk.
Well, no.
Right? Well, I guess how do you define wisdom?
Yeah. Oh, you'd normally say, well, it's Spock, he's smarter. But he may overlook things that are affected by human emotion and not be able to read a situation.
Okay, that's fair.
Because it doesn't depend on logic.
That's fair. Right. That's okay. That's fair. Okay. Let's go the other way. We talked about what scares you the most about people. What gives you the most hope about people?
Because when I look in myself, it's not that I have thoughts, but I'm aware of my thoughts. That awareness that I found in myself, I don't think is different in us. We may have different thoughts, different feelings, but self-awareness, I don't think has any characteristics other than observation. And so my question is there really more than one of us in the universe? Or inside, when you take away all the other experiences, is there really only one of us here? That what I see in myself, that self, that sense of being, maybe there's only one of them.
Well, now you get into all kinds of crazy stuff. You could be like, I mean, not crazy stuff, I didn't mean to say that, but like there's different theories. There's solipsism, which is, you know, just the idea that only everything exists because I exist and I have a mind to make it exist.
Yeah.
And then you have okay, well, if we're all parts of stardust anyways, and we're just have evolved to this place where we're the universe looking back on itself and reflecting. There's all these, you know, and there's even quite a number of religious undertones that would work here too. But so how does that give you hope?
Well, because let's say I'm in a group of people and we're at odds.
Oh,
there's a common element there.
I gotcha.
If you can appeal to that element, if it's really the same in all of us, that we're really just here experiencing life, then the fact that we're having different experiences and forming different opinions isn't a surprise.
It's not just common element, it's common elements.
I mean, so I try to do that with people, find the commonality and connect with that.
Very good, which you can almost do all the time.
Yeah.
We're going to keep talking, but are we going to get rained on? I feel like a little
I don't
something.
know.
That was interesting.
Well,
Okay. Okay, so we talked about what gives you the most hope. What do you find the most disappointing? about us people, about us humans here? What's the most disappointing?
Well, you see, every time my ideas of the world don't match with what I see of the world, I lower my expectations. I figure it's my expectations that are wrong and not the world. I'm failing to see the world the way it is. So after a while, like I say, very little surprises me because I've made my expectations so low that the only surprise I ever get is when something works right unexpectedly.
Well, there is certainly a theory to, if one can authentically, successfully do it, to lower expectations in just about any realm, you'll be happier.
That's right.
I mean, to the extent one can, but you have to be able to really do it.
I mean, there's people that would love to be sitting here in this weather, breathing clean air. I'm alive, I can dream, my limbs are all attached, I can see, I can hear. You realize how big a deal that could be to some people who do not have that?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So basically, by lowering my expectations, then this all seems fantastic. Right. And I think that's what enlightened people experience. They experience the real world, and there's no difference between their expectations and the world.
Right, anymore. In other words, they're not... There's no overlay of meaning. They're just seeing it for what it is, and that's it. And then they just go with the flow.
And it's just all fine.
Yeah, I'm far away from that. But
we're all working on it to one degree.
I sort of I liken what you were just talking about, sort of to the dating world. It's like, if you, I can't find anyone good to date, or I'm not attracted to so and so, or hey, lower your expectations. Yeah. You would be able to go out on a lot more dates, and then maybe you find something that's still interesting and acceptable. I don't know.
I knew this rather.
I'm not saying to do that, by the way. I'm just saying that that's a thing.
I tend to be inept at some relationships, and that's the reason I'm still single. There was a lady I knew for a long time, and she described the kind of guy she wanted to marry.
Okay.
And he's big, he's tall, he's got money, he's very kind, he's all of this. And then I turned to her and said, and what does he want to do with you?
Right.
Well, this is why I'm still single.
Yes. I also need him to be okay with somebody that is nowhere near this caliber.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good luck with that. Anyways, that'd be tough to find. This is a fun question. What are your favorite type of people?
The outsiders. Okay. The unconventional. And even if they're past the point of any rationality, because I find it interesting to hear how they can, I would call it connecting the dots. Mm-hmm. One guy I met at a coffee house once, was explaining that if you analyze words, it somehow controls what people think. And when you say hang around, well, around is a clock, so you have to have time. And it was absolutely...
He had it all figured out.
It was bonkers, but he had it all patched together. So I had an interesting time.
What's funny is I hear you say, it was bonkers, but you got to think like somewhere in those hundreds of thousands of people out there, is the next Einstein. You know what I mean? He probably has the next version of relativity or something figured out. And we're not hearing it because, it's some guy on the street who's doing what you said.
I don't know how many times I watch a lot of science videos.
Yeah.
Like Feynman, I think when he presented his Feynman diagrams, was almost booed off the stage by other physicists.
That's something.
And all of these people that made breakthroughs were not accepted. In fact, some of them died before their ideas were accepted. Yeah. But I'm looking for that because I feel trapped in my own limitations. Oh. If I could only get out of the ones I'm in, and I'm seeming to be really out, Hey, if you get more out. Right. But no, I don't think I am.
Huh. Okay, so what are the type of people you least like? You're thinking ones that ask too many questions.
No, I'm fine with that. That's me. Go ahead, ask me.
But who are the type of people that you least like?
Autocrats. People who use power instead of reason for things. People who are bullies and have no empathy for other people. Very sociopathic people. And I just want to avoid them. It's not that I want to give them a lot of consideration. That's tying up neurons I got better use for. But, yeah.
Can I give you mine and you tell me your opinion of it?
Okay.
So my least favorite, actually, let me give you my favorite type of person and my least favorite because they kind of go together.
Okay.
My favorite type of person is someone that, at least in my view, or at least and culturally, is considered just decent.
Okay. All right.
Not perfect,
Yeah.
not great, but you know, they're doing more good than bad.
Sure.
Generally speaking, they're pleasant to be around. They're
Yeah.
just a decent human being trying to go along to get along and not ruffle too many feathers.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, if things go right, they've advanced us a little bit at the end.
Okay.
You know, my least favorite, I think, are people that are disingenuous.
Okay.
In other words, those are like, hey, Luhan, I'll come over and help you move on Saturday. Just let me know. I've got it wide open. Then you call me on Saturday. I'm like, oh, I'm sick, right?
Yeah.
I never, in other words, I never had any intention of helping you in the first place,
Okay.
right? Or, you know, like a fake friend, or you know, basically just disingenuous. I don't, for some reason, that just makes my skin crawl because I'm like, oh. I don't know why that is. What do you think about being disingenuous?
I have the same kind of feeling toward.
Yeah.
It violates the. I go back to the village, where we had to survive with each other in a village, because those people aren't useful in the village.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you could look at people. If we just had a village of like 40 people and we were the only people around for 1,000 miles,
Right.
we would think of each other differently. We would
Yes.
put a huge value on every single person in there and value everyone, because in that size group, everyone's important.
Right. Well, and if you look at the opposite of disingenuous, it's truth. Right.
It's truth.
And so
Yes.
there you go.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Who is someone that you admire, living or deceased?
I had a problem with that for years. I had no heroes.
Okay.
No one I admired until.
You saw Michael Jordan play.
No, I'll
just
tell you
kidding.
who it is. Dr. Gregory House. You ever see the show House, the doctor?
I didn't, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, where he's always coming up with brilliant solution for things, but has the world's worst bedside manner.
Oh,
You know,
that's funny.
my mother used to just get hysterical watching it because of his so rude bedside manner. I identify with him because he's in an environment where no one else understands how he comes up with the ideas, and yet he knows what he's doing, and he's very unconventional. I guess it's the most unconventional hero I've ever seen on TV, and I took a liking to that because that's
pretty
how
cool.
I felt. I've had screaming matches with rooms full of engineers, all telling me I was wrong.
That sounds fun.
But the good thing about engineering is once you make it work, everyone else
I was
shuts up.
I was gonna say you can back it up. So
That's right.
this is kind of a tangent here, but
Okay.
how do you think you'd be different if you were raised by a different family?
Oh, well,
'Cause you have 4 brothers.
I've got 4 younger brothers,
Okay.
and I was raised in a very fundamentalist religious family.
Okay.
And what that did for me was made me an atheist because I thought those people weren't that bright.
That's hilarious.
In the 3rd grade, I stood up in my parochial grade school and asked them to prove that God exists.
In 3rd grade.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, that kind of takes precocious child to the nth degree, now that I look at it.
Yeah,
How was I? But it was simple honesty. I thought they should be able to prove it. Because I watched science shows on TV, and I thought, they want you to believe this. Well, okay, how do I? And of course, they were at a total loss. So until I got out of the 8th grade of that horrible school I was in, they didn't know what the hell to do with me.
What is interesting, I find, is that some of the most robust questions come from children.
Oh yeah.
You know, because first of all, they're not laminated already with all this, like, you know, there's no overlay of
There's
just
no
junk
filter,
there.
as they
It's just
say.
they're a blank slate.
Yes.
Still.
And
And so, like, when they ask a question, like one of the kids will annoy their parents to know it. Why? Okay, but why?
But
But why?
why?
But why? And very oftentimes it's because you have not answered it effectively.
Yeah.
Once you get there, they'll
good.
stop with the whys. And it's just so interesting that children can ask the most interesting and difficult questions. and really stump a lot of grown-ups.
The Art Linkletter used to have a TV show, probably before you were born, that it's called Children Say the Damnedest Things. And they were real things when you'd ask children what their answers were.
Okay.
And they would run shows week after week after week.
They would just ask questions, like adult questions to children?
Well,
Or like,
I saw someplace that was just
like how do you think cars are made or something?
no, fourth graders answering common questions. And one was asked, well, what do you do on Thanksgiving? And the kid says, well, first you murder a turkey, then you rip its guts out.
Wow.
Well, it's true. You know, that's exactly how you prepare a turkey.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so, sorry. Okay, how do you think you'd be different if you were raised in a different country?
Oh, I don't know. You know, how much of you is just who you are?
Yeah, the nature nurture there.
Well, let me take it back to the Stone Age.
Okay.
If we were living in mud huts built with rocks and sticks and mud and leaves holding it together, I would try to design a better mud hut, because that's who I am.
I see.
Today I do engineering and make technology that works better than other people did. But that's innate part of myself. So I think if you put me in any culture, I'd be trying to make things work better.
Okay, so you might still be you. You might just speak a different language and like soccer or something.
Yeah, but I think, I don't think engineering is a job I had. I think it's who I am in essence. I just want to try to make things.
Very good.
So it'd be better mud huts. We'd have had better mud huts if I would have been there.
Okay. This is an interesting question, but I'm going to ask it. I like this question. Why do you think bad things happen to good people?
Oh.
Since we're talking about people, this is a people conversation.
Okay.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, you know, I hate to come off as a know-it-all, but a lot of these questions you ask me, I've thought about a lot.
Great. Then I'm asking the right person.
Here's why bad things happen to good people. It's called free will.
Okay.
And this argument comes out of a theological discussion.
Yeah, some people believe we have it, some people don't.
If there's a God, why does he let such bad things happen to us? Because if he didn't, we wouldn't have free will. We wouldn't be cognitive beings. We'd be controlled if we weren't allowed to screw up.
Okay.
So basically, there's a logistical conflict that even if there's a God, he can't circumvent. You can't have free will and make people do all the right things.
Could you, just for argument's sake,
Okay.
let them have free will, they do something bad, and then because you're an omnipotent God, you correct it after the fact?
Well, we effectively do that. We call it laws and culture.
Oh, okay.
And scripture
Okay.
tell you, no, don't do this.
Okay. So when we say why do bad things happen to good people, your answer is effectively...
Well, here's the story I like the best.
Okay.
There's a flood.
Yeah.
And excuse me, many people may have heard this. And this guy has to climb up on his roof. But he's very devout, religious person. And a boat comes by. Get in our boat.
I love this. I think I know. Go.
And it help us. Oh, no, don't worry. The Lord will save you. And then they leave, and another boat comes by. Hey, it's getting, up to your chest. Come in the boat.
Yeah.
Oh, finally, he's up to his neck.
He's about done waiting.
And a helicopter comes and says, quick, grab the rope. Don't worry. So he finds he's now underwater drowning, and he's in front of St. Peter. And he says, what happened? Why wasn't I saved? And the guy looks in his book and says, we sent 2 boats and a helicopter.
Oh, you think? Yeah, right. Yeah. I love that.
That's how it works.
Okay.
I love that story,
Yeah,
too.
that's a hilarious joke. I love that. What are you talking about? I said 3 people after you.
Yeah, really.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, my thought on why do bad things happen to good people is just essentially chaos. There is no rhyme or reason. That's just my own idea. Is things are just random, and sometimes you just get the short straw, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's definitely not fair in any way, shape, or form. It's tragic in a lot of cases, but it's just the universe is just random chaos.
I got something close to that.
Yeah.
I would say humans are a species that developed opportunistically between 2 ice ages. That's what we are. Between two ice ages, we did all this development, and then we go around, what's the meaning? There's no meaning.
Right.
You, an opportunistic species that happens to breathe the air here, can eat the plants and drink the water.
And contemplate the word meaning.
Now, there is meaning, but we create it. Once you know that it's a creation of man, then go create meaning. But looking for meaning is like, oh, maybe it's under here. Oh, you're hiding. You can't look for meaning.
I have a feeling this might have been in one of those classes or seminars you talked about. But there's a sort of, I think this is more of an Eastern way of thinking. But there's this idea of that life is meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Per se.
And then until you place upon it meaning.
Yes, exactly.
And
that's
so
what I see.
In other words, it's a blank slate, and then everybody puts their own meaning onto this thing, this canvas, if you will. But life itself is meaningless until the individual applies meaning. Which is why we don't always see everything the same way.
Meaning is a construct of our minds.
Yeah. So what do you think about the idea of, I just threw this in here, and I don't know why you were saying something that made me think of it. What do you think about the idea of acceptance, in generally speaking? You know, like say you've got someone in your family that's got exhibiting bad behavior, or you're in a relationship that's not great, or you're in a job where the boss is a certain way, or whatever. Just in general, the idea of acceptance. What say you about acceptance?
Well, accept the things you can't change and change the things you can change. And,
it's the old Serenity.
And know the difference.
Yeah,
I mean, you either have to accept it or change it. Depends whether you can.
I think that is one of the most profound and best things ever said. It is,
I think so too.
It is right up there. What I find interesting about acceptance is that, on the one hand, I definitely understand the idea of acceptance. Right? It's saying, hey, this is the way that it is, and it's best you reconcile that, and then just kind of go about your life. On the other hand, I look at things and I say, gosh, but if it wasn't for those that just refuse to accept things, that's where empires fall. That's how technology advances and new scientific endeavors happen. So it's like, I guess it's acceptance to a point, or do you know what I mean? Or like, because you feel like some of the most revolutionary, neat things that have ever happened in humankind were from those that just refuse to accept things.
Oh, well, that's true. When you say things I can't accept, the things I can't change, well, what that actually means is you don't know how to change it.
Right. But some of these things people deemed impossible.
They have,
right?
Until they happen. For how much of our human history was nothing heavier than air can fly?
Right. Wow.
Well, tell that to the local airport. Okay. So that thing about accepting what you can't change, but you may not want to totally give up on keeping exploring ways you might. You accept it for the present, but not for an infinite future. You say, I'm going to accept this until I can find a way to change it.
I find this particularly challenging for my own person, just because I think almost everything is possible.
Okay.
You're given enough time, given enough technology, given enough resources.
Yeah.
I have this feeling that everything is possible and nothing's impossible.
Yeah.
And so for me, I find acceptance very challenging, even as it relates to a relationship or a family or a friend thing, because I'm like, oh, if I could just do the right thing, say the right thing, we're in this right environment, or even for my own self, right? I always feel like nothing's impossible, and it's a great strain, because acceptance would sure be a whole lot. Well, I recognize the benefits of acceptance. I truly do.
Well,
it seems
this is the first time this thought ever occurred to me about the acceptance and the things you can't change. There's no such thing as you can absolutely know that something can't change, but acceptance means you're not gonna let it mess you up right now. You'll deal with it, accept it for now. It's not accepted; it's accepted for now.
Yeah.
With that being always open-ended.
Yeah, the way that I wrap my brain around this for me is I go with probabilities.
Okay.
I always say, okay, I accept that there's a 98% probability I cannot influence or change this for the better.
Okay.
Therefore, at 98%, it's probably not worth my effort given the importance of this thing. And so I just do math calculations all the time in my head. And I think a lot of people do that even unknowingly.
Sure.
But like I tend to play probabilities.
Okay.
And I'll try and try and try. But if I get, this door slammed in my face and my head's like, okay, the probability is lower than I thought. So maybe we retool. Anyway, okay. If you could dedicate your life to solving one problem, just one problem, what would it be? Sorry.
Okay.
You obviously had no heads up on these questions,
Okay.
so we're just coming at you.
If I could know that you can change anything about your reality.
About your own reality.
Your own reality is a mutable thing. And that when I did these seminars and they had these breakthroughs where you had to hit it so hard, now you believe you can walk on fire or whatever. I've been in conventional therapy, and I wanted to ask my therapist once, if you could tell each of your patients and make them change one thing, how powerful would that be? And they go, oh, if this patient only would change this one thing,
Right.
which isn't something outlandish because the other 3 patients already did that. You see what I mean? It's the one
Sure.
thing that's messing them up. So the ability, giving people knowing that they have the ability to change themselves.
Okay, I like that, and I'm going to raise you one on that.
Oh, okay,
because change, I find, such an incredible topic because, first of all, it's inevitable. Change is always happening. It's inevitable. Change is happening.
Yeah.
But also, as it relates to people, just us humans, there's like this crazy power we have to change. If you live in a free society, which most people do, or I think most people do, to change everything. I could change the relationship in my tomorrow. I could change my job tomorrow. I can change who I interact with tomorrow. I could change where I live tomorrow. You know, we have this capacity to literally, on the dime,
external level,
on a dime, change our trajectory in big, meaningful ways. Tomorrow, you could say, you know what? I'm taking all my cash and I'm flying to Australia and I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
Your whole trajectory has completely changed. And what I find interesting is that it's almost like it's too much power. It's almost like, wow, I could change everything.
Yeah.
I could change anything in a flash. And it's immense amount of power.
I took all those brutal, what we used to call rubber hose seminars, was that it's hard to do the internal change. I see that this is real to me in the world. People are unkind.
Yes.
And if you get rid of that and think people are kind, your reality changes. And I don't just mean you interpret it differently. I mean people will start treating you differently because we're affecting each other. So the internal one is where we don't have all that freedom. If I could give people, to answer that question, that internal freedom to change the inside as easily as we could change the outside.
Oh, right. I would say changing, yes, there's a big distinction, and it's much harder to change who you are versus your circumstances. But to the extent one can change their circumstances, I just, there's so many people that are in, abusive relationships, a non-fulfilling job, you know, all these things. And literally, they might stay in this abusive relationship even after the children are gone, right? They'll stay in it. And literally, the solution to it is a decision and a plane ticket or gassing up the car, and it's over. You've changed your entire trajectory. And I find that so incredibly powerful and almost like scary, the power that we have to change our trajectory so quickly and so easily. Anyway, I don't know if I came up with that. It is interesting, but I see how I get the change inside is more powerful, but is
much more difficult.
Much more difficult. Yeah. That's right. But yet the other one, look how difficult the other one is.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's it's so. Anyway, what are 3 things you value, or what are a couple things you value most in a person?
Empathy.
That's
creativity. First thing you want to know, there was a phrase that he taught in one of my seminars was, you don't care how much somebody knows until you know how much they care. In other words, if they're not on your side, who cares? So the first thing is empathy. Are people really on your side? Then you want to know.
I've got a fun one for you, since you brought that up.
Okay.
If I may.
Go ahead.
So you brought up, do they care about you, or what's their relationship to you? Here's an interesting phenomenon about the human condition that I find baffling. I've used this analogy before, but let's say I'm a high school kid, right? And I'm walking through the mall and I'm clothes shopping for the new school year. And my mom says to me, hey, I don't think that's right for you. I don't think you look great in that, right? Your guttural reaction of most high schoolers is, oh, you're my mom, you're old, what do you know, blah, 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 right? But if I'm walking down that same mall and a perfect stranger, another mom that I don't know at all, says, hey, nice clothes, idiot, I would take them and burn them, right? You'd be mortified that this perfect stranger called you out and said your clothes are terrible, right? And what I find crazy about that is, on the one hand, you're just throwing out the opinion, almost completely disavowing that, of your mom who loves you, who has your best interests in mind. You give that opinion no weight. And then a perfect stranger that you'll never see again, that doesn't know you at all, you give their opinion a tremendous amount of weight. And isn't that a wild human condition?
I'm trying to see if I got experience of actually that happening to me. I believe it.
Well, I've definitely seen it happen to, that's not even a real life experience for me. I'm just saying, I know this to have happened where people all the time, any outward person that you don't even know is like, oh yeah, nice hair, buddy. And you're like, whoa. But somebody that cares about you that could critique your hair, you'd be like, oh, what do they know? And that's just such a weird phenomenon.
Well, it may be that, once we got a story, a set of beliefs about this other person, we kind of got them in a box. We've already been through a lot of stuff. Where the other one is kind of new stuff flying at us. One I remember is this lady I met. I was over at her house, and she's got this 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And she's trying to get her 4-year-old to go play over there. And I said, hey, go play over there. And he did it. And she says, every time I have a boyfriend over here, the kid will do whatever the boyfriend tells him, but won't listen to me. Well, probably because your boyfriend is some big, hairy guy and scared the shit out of your kid.
Right.
So in that case, there's that explanation.
Well, that definitely makes sense, certainly with children. Plus, they would just be, they would know. Well, I guess I would go with the older, too. You're just like, I don't know. But it is interesting to me how we put so much value on opinions that shouldn't matter, and give very little credence to those that should. It seems weird. It seems opposite to me. Anyway,
yeah, okay. I have to think about that.
What is one thing that all too often people must misunderstand about you? What's something that you think people misunderstand about you, or you wish people knew?
Oh, misunderstand. Well, sometimes when I get
some in the past,
real non-standard ideas, some people may think I'm not smart enough to know the right answer. But what I've really done is gone beyond it. It's almost, I show these 3 levels of people. There's the uneducated who think that astrology was maybe an elective in high school, that don't understand that that's not part of science.
Right.
And then there's the educated people. They study literature and science, and but it's all coming from the outside in. Okay. Then there's people that saw the limits, that this only goes so far, and try to go beyond that. Well, when a level 2 person sees a level 3 person, he often thinks it's a level 1 person. Wow. He thinks, don't you know that's the wrong way to do this?
Yeah. So
I get that a lot. I get people feeling, well, you sounded smarter before you started talking, Right.
Meanwhile, you're entertaining thoughts and conversations at a different level altogether.
Yeah, it's not because I haven't been educated. It's I see some limits, and well, what about that, So that does happen. But now I've accepted it. That's part of the world. Yeah.
What do you think about being misunderstood at all? What do you think about being misunderstanding? I hate it. I hate when people misunderstand me.
I guess,
It happens a lot.
That's a tough one. We all think in different terms. That's not a term I put a lot of thinking in. In other words, what you got here is a structure for thinking. I don't think in terms of whether I'm misunderstood. I think in terms of, do I know what I'm talking about? Have I communicated to this person? Does it do any good? Right. Is it helpful rather than hurtful? Those are categories. This isn't a category I use much.
Oh, very interesting.
Whether I'm misunderstood. Because I think it's part of my German background. Yeah. You can always tell a German, but you can't tell them much. Because Germans are always so sure about what they believe. So when somebody disagrees with me, I'm thinking, yeah, that means I'm smarter than them.
Okay, but when I think it is, for me, is when I say I go out of my way to communicate a certain opinion, and somebody might take that I had the counter opinion to that, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I explain myself good. Let me re-explain it again in a different way, and I'm like, I'm like baffled. And then while I'm doing that, they really don't even care. They've already formed their opinion. They don't even, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, I'm just talking because I like to talk.
You know, we understand that if you go to France and start speaking English to the people on the street, they may not understand you.
Yeah.
But what we don't know is even between us in the same culture, in the same country, our experiences are so different. The categories we think in are different. Not just what our opinion is of something, but the very categories themselves are different. And that when you try to communicate with somebody, it's a miracle that anything gets through at all, okay?
Yeah, I like that too. To the traffic out here on the roads. I'm like, you got 5 lanes of freeway traffic. There should be a car accident every minute. You got every type of personality, every type of vehicle, every size of vehicle. You know, old people, young people, speedsters, and yet there's hardly any accidents by and large. Yeah, which is kind of miraculous. But anyway, I don't know. I just I don't know, the misunderstanding thing. I think it's so pervasive. It is, and especially now because everybody is a soundbite genius. I heard one thing, I know it. I heard one thing, I know it. And everybody's a soundbite genius about so many things that it's very easy to misunderstand. I guess if I want to communicate something to somebody, I'd first try to figure out the categories they think in. Do you think in terms of good and bad? Some people don't. Do you think survival or failure? Some people don't. Do you think us versus them? Some people don't. What are the categories? And once I see what categories they're using, I might be able to communicate an idea because it's going to be interpreted with their categories. Right. That's a good point. I mean, that is one of the biggest mistakes I think so many of us make is we think people have, the same operating system that we do, that they're filtering things through and digesting information. That's why we should all, and that's a big issue. I have to apply this especially to myself, should do more listening than talking. Oh yeah, the old two ears, one mouth situation. I know, that's right. I get that ratio wrong. If the ratio was correct on me, I'd have about 25 mouths, a tiny little ear hole right here. I know, it's sad. But thankfully YouTube gives me a forum. Yeah. So yes, by the way, since we're over an hour in, please subscribe and thumbs up, like us, please. Okay, something you recommend everyone try at least once. I would have trouble giving that out as a general thing to everyone because there are so many different situations. I'm afraid if they followed my advice and it screwed up, I'd feel guilty. Okay, good point. Okay. Maybe I might need to withdraw that question, actually. That's a good point. Okay, what's the craziest thing you've ever done, and would you do it again? Oh, boy. You don't have to go there if you don't want to. But. Well, no, it's like I'm trying to sort through a big pile of stuff right here. What's the of all of the things I've ever done? It wasn't the question was... okay. You have to understand the pile of stuff I'm now mentally going through because I've done so many. We're actually going to do this on a different one. Okay. We're going to come because I've got a whole nother video we'll do on this. So we'll come back to that. Okay. What would you say is you're 77? Yeah. You're in fantastic health, at least, from my point of view, just observationally. What is the secret to good health? What do you credit this to? Actually, and this may sound like proselytizing, but when I was about 20 years old, got out of the Army, and I'd done some Zen meditation while I was in the Army, I found some people back in Urbana teaching Transcendental Meditation from Maharishi. It's like $35 at a student discount. Why don't I just try it? Okay. Oh my God, did that work like gangbusters. Wow. It not only works, but it works immediately. You don't have to practice to get good at it. Transcendental Meditation. Yeah, they have a teaching method where the first time that you sit down and do it, it works full on. And do you still do it? Well, I did it for at least 25 solid years, and that's twice a day. Long time. Because the change was incredible. Twice a day for how long a day? It's 20 minutes twice a day. Oh, so not that long, really? No, and somebody asked, well, I'm busy. If I spend 20 minutes, how long is it going to take me to catch up to my day? Oh, about the next 20 minutes, and then you're going to be ahead. Okay. Wow. No, it's the most fantastic. I wrote 2 decisions I made in my life that turned out real good. That's one of the 2. Okay. Wow. That's one of the 2 I recommend to everybody. Okay, so transcendental meditation is a game changer for you.
Absolute. I can't even start to describe all the things that happen.
Wow.
Mostly, I felt.
By the way, you're not alone on this. I mean, a lot of people swear by that.
Also, it seems to retard the aging process.
Yeah, which I mean, you would be an example of that.
Yeah. Now I'm doing it again after a hiatus where my life took a lot of twists and turns. I've now been doing it again, and it seems to be helping me along. So.
Wow. Okay, so what is a secret? And this might be the same answer, but do you have any secrets to happiness or any ideas to help people with happiness endeavor? That are.
I'm still trying to figure it out just for myself.
Yeah.
I seem to be happiest when I'm involved in some creative process, but I don't know if that works for everybody. I go in this place in my mind where there isn't even any verbal thoughts anymore. There's almost not an image. It's an area of just conceptual thinking. And out of that spring certain things. And then I go in my bathroom and build something that hasn't been done before.
There is a lot of psychological and scientific evidence to support your idea in your favor that creativity does that. For one thing, people always talk about living in the moment, living in the present moment. Also, creativity forces that.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Like if I'm knee deep in whatever, putting together a painting or composing a symphony.
Oh, you're right? Just totally.
You're in it.
Yeah.
And there's so many benefits to that, right? Time slows down. Right? There's the health benefits of being focused on a project that you're really engaged in. So, anyways, you got a lot of backup there. Yeah. What's the best advice you've ever got, or like a favorite saying or something like that? Anything like that? Oh wait, oh my God.
What best advice? I don't know if I can get it. That to me doesn't attach to any one person, but the things I did, the Transcendental Meditation, the S seminar, the other thing I recommend to everybody is the Avatar program. What that does is get you, those changes we talked about internally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has a methodology lets you do that at will. Just like you can change the external one, it lets you change internal ones.
Oh, wow.
And boy, does your life change when you do that. So that's the two, the Transcendental Meditation and the Avatar program that have been the most useful. But they weren't just from a person.
So it sounds like, just as a more generic answer to that you're all about self-help and not afraid to go to seminars and gurus and read books and stuff like that?
Well, to the degree, and there's a whole story how I was kicked out of Scientology, which is unusual because I was only there for a week, and they decided they had to kick me out because I was so good at it. I had already regressed into my last lifetime in the first week, which usually takes years in their system, and they told me they couldn't do it anymore. And I finally cornered somebody. He says, "Why did you kick me out? I was having fun with this." They says, "Well, it could be dangerous because of the way you work and can do this so well." I said, "What's the worst that can happen?" They said, "It could kill you." I says, "I'm willing to take that risk." They said, "We're not."
Wow.
So that's how far it goes with me.
That is interesting.
I have more than once come up to my own death.
The man who broke Scientology.
Man, how many people? Sometimes I think I've got a reputation for all the weird things I did, that I got so many points for signing up for Scientology, but I got lots more points for being kicked out. Okay.
Wow, that's crazy. We're just going to do 3 more questions.
Okay.
Do you believe in second chances? Giving people second chances?
I believe in an infinite number of chances.
Okay.
Because I believe we're infinite beings with an infinite number of lifetimes until we get it all right.
Oh, okay.
So there is no second chance. Third, fourth, fifth.
Does that mean you're Buddhist, or is that
I'm very much in line with Buddhist thing of multiple lifetimes, and
because that sounded a lot like.
Well, what I found is very handy about that. See, I put off something to my next lifetime, which is the ultimate in procrastination. I'm now able to push it into the next. Well, I'm going to do that my next lifetime.
I'll do that. I don't recall them teaching that a lot in the Buddhist schools, but they sure should, because they would get recruitment would go right up.
That's right.
Just push it all off to the next lifetime.
What the hell?
About it. Oh my gosh, that's great. That's funny. I don't know enough about Buddhism to speak on the subject. I just know that that's what you've described. Seems to be what little I have read on the subject.
Yeah.
Pretty
well,
much.
I didn't ever study Buddhism.
Oh, wow.
I did a type of Zen meditation and had an experience of what they call an enlightened level. I couldn't stay there. My nervous system won't support it. But I saw it. And when you see it once, you know it the rest of your life. It's literally like you woke up for the first time in your life and you wonder, what the fuck was I doing the rest of this time?
And, and this experience, you were sober and meditating?
Oh, absolutely.
And it was, and so...
You have to get to a point where your mind stops. Try to stop thinking sometimes. And I got it after several days of sitting there, and I quit doing drugs, quit drinking, and I'm in Korea in the army, staring at a spot in the wall, trying to not think. And on the fourth or fifth day, all of a sudden it happened. It was like I woke up. And I thought, wow. So that the whole experience lasted like 1 or 2 seconds. As soon as you say, wow, you're back to thinking. But I saw what it's all about, what the greatest minds and all.
So what is it all about?
And it is that we're actually not living normally life. What we think is normal life is a sub-normal level. If we were living a normal life, like 99% of all humans' problems would go away. However, we got to deal with what we got here. We're not living.
So what did you see? How would you describe, or what did you feel, or how did you describe it?
That experience has never been successfully described. In other words, to describe something, you have to relate it to something similar, but there isn't any. Oh, and it's been described as streets paved with gold in some scriptures. But what I experienced was literally awakening. That from this level, I woke up. And sometimes later you think, what kind of weird... I have never doubted that experience.
Okay, and how did that manifest? Did it change, did you just live life more like whatever, or did it, or every moment matters so much now, I got to be critical on everything? Or
it was
how did it change?
Life had no other purpose but to try to get back there.
Oh.
And I was able...
and you hit an enlightenment stage and you want to get back there.
Oh, yeah. Now, when I was in Korea, they hit a wood shop.
Wow.
And I can do woodwork. I can make a box. Nothing looks good, but I can make it. I got into that state one day, and in that state, you appear to be doing nothing. You appear to be just observing. Your hands move, your muscles pull.
Meaning you're watching yourself?
You're watching your thoughts, your feelings, everything. You're the separate entity. And I built these speaker cabinets that were so precise. My hands knew what to do. Another time I had to change it. You ever try to change a tire with nothing but 2 tire irons?
No.
I was in my parents' garage years later. I got into this state, and as I moved the tire irons, the thing came off like it fell off in my hands. I don't mean it was easy. I mean it was effortless. There's a feeling that everything is going by itself and everything is working.
Weird.
It's indescribably indescribable.
Yeah. I've had a little bit of experience with mindfulness, trying to work and do it, and I've read a lot of books on this subject stuff, and I've not gotten anywhere near that, but I have definitely played the role of observer and watched, and I've gotten that far.
That is effectively manual enlightenment.
And I will say, I think, this is my own opinion, I am definitely not an expert in this field, but for me personally, being a very I hate labels, but sort of a very type A, very controlled type of person, to just be the observer and kind of watch it. There was a moment where, I felt like I was going to maybe lose myself, and it really freaked me out. Yeah. And so I retracted very quickly. I'm like, oh no, this is not for me. I really was like,
you ain't the first one to come up to that.
Yeah, and that's as far as I ever got. Okay. And so what I came away with from that is I thought, I can definitely see the power in this, because I've used that observational technique when I've had a lot of say physical pain.
Oh, okay.
To just close my eyes and okay, let's watch. What is it like to be that person watching them in physical pain? And I'll be damned if it doesn't work every time. Where the physical pain just it becomes so diluted because I'm just watching a movie, myself as a movie. That's right.
That's it.
It's crazy.
So you've actually had the same experience I had.
Well, I got to that point, but again, it was very unnerving. It was so uncomfortable because I felt like I was losing control, and as a control person, that was a big challenge.
You are, because that experience of the self is what they call it, the big S self, does not do anything.
Yeah.
So if that's you now, all the stuff's going on by itself, including your own thoughts and feelings.
Well, that begged the question afterwards. I was like, okay, am I the observer or am I the observed? Am I all of it? What the hell is going on here? And it becomes like, even for a person that likes to think about those subjects, it can be very challenging.
Yeah,
and again, it can actually, and I think in some cases bring on, some not great feelings if you don't manage it well.
The surprise to me, I had an impression before I first did this successfully, meditation, of a separate self and that from the mindfulness type things and that. Only this is like gangbusters. It's absolutely. The surprising part wasn't that the self was so existent, but the other stuff started working better. I mean, everything I did with my hands, changing a tire, having a nail, because I wasn't doing it anymore, I was observing it. The closest metaphor I could get is like, if like your body and that whole system, mind, body, is driving a car, and the self-awareness is sitting next to you, and decides to grab the wheel to help you steer, you're going to be in a ditch. Because apparently when the two get together, they screw up. When they're separate, they both work great.
Oh, now that's interesting.
And I think what people call getting in the zone is when they're so involved in the basketball game or the
in the zone.
In the zone.
Go in the flow.
In other words, they quit interfering with their own body, self, mind, body thing. It just, once you get hands off of it, it works really, really well.
Okay, I have heard that thing. I am wondering, and this is just another tangent, but in the zone thing, I liken it because, like, you see somebody like a Michael Jordan that's, a zillion times better than the next professional, like just so good. And, when people get in like a car accident, a bad car accident, time goes slower. The mind literally like starts taking like all these snapshots, like the speed of the shutter goes a lot slower.
That's right.
And you're recording all this information in like a real sort of. I think some of those very special athletes and things like that have that sort of car accident feeling, which makes them so much quicker, better, and more responsive than other people.
Neil deGrasse Tyson actually talked about that. There were actually real experiments done.
Oh, I have no idea.
Where they had these things flashing that in ordinary consciousness you could not see them. They were too fast. But when they put a person in a situation where they were like, they could see
Isn't that crazy?
And this is actually measurable. Your brain starts running faster.
So you can imagine some of the best athletes and minds or whatever just are born that way or can flip that switch or something like that. Yeah. Anyways, back to just the mindfulness thing real quick. But that whole observer and observed situation. I don't know. Did you find that like I know when I had a couple of good mindfulness sessions, I didn't do this very often, but if they were going well, and say it was 20 minutes or a half hour, whatever it was, if it went well, it felt like a minute. But if it wasn't going well, it felt like it took forever. Is that or no?
Well, time always goes faster when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Oh, I guess that's true. That's a good way to put it. I didn't think it was so basic, but yeah, that is true.
10 minutes or 2 minutes kissing your girlfriend seems like a much shorter time than 2 minutes sitting on a hot stove.
That's
the metaphor I heard.
That's a fact.
That's
2 minutes on that hot stove is going to hurt for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, last two questions. What do you think about gut feelings?
Totally into them.
What is it?
Well, it's us connecting with our unconscious mind, which I don't like the term unconscious. I don't think our unconscious, it's a separate consciousness. I think it's thinking just like we are. It's disconnected from the conscious self that's connected to the outside world here and interacting. But it's in there, and I think it's bigger than most of our conscious selves, and certainly has things it knows, and intuition or gut feelings is our connection to it. Because I trust mine a lot. Every time, and it started happening in my late 20s and happened for years, and it really upset me because I'd have something figured out to do and get a gut feeling I shouldn't, and I kept track. And my gut feeling was always right, as near as I can tell. These were major things that stuck in my mind, if they go along with each other, if the gut feeling and the intellect are in line, you don't notice. But sometimes mine diverge radically. And for the first several years, I went with my intellect and found out why I was wrong later. And then I started switching over, go with the gut feeling, even though I'm absolutely sure I'm right. And as far as I know, my intellect has a perfect record of never being right
The gut
once.
feeling and intuition is a batting 1,000.
Yeah.
Well, I would tell you, I think I agree with you in respect to the gut feeling being accurate quite a bit, and I liken gut feeling, intuition. But I come about it differently. I'll tell you what I think it is, and but what I think it is I think it's all of the experiences you've had up until that point are sort of locked into some file cabinet in there.
Okay.
And when this experience is happening right here, intuition or a gut feeling is going and checking all those files and saying, hey, wait a minute, we've experienced something kind of like this before. Yeah. Maybe we back away from this. So what I think intuition is, for me, my own opinion, is that it's a certain sort of wisdom. It's just a lot of data that we've piled up there that gets called upon once in a while. That's my theory.
That's pretty close to what I would say. It's almost like going to yourself for a second opinion.
Totally.
Because it seems to work differently than the conscious mind.
And it manifests exactly as a second opinion. You might be getting ready to go through a door, and it'll be like, I don't know if we should go through that door. And then you're literally having this conversation, deciding in real time. So,
oh yeah.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
Do you think, not with us, obviously, but do you think there's a problem being able to have effective discussions these days?
Well, it's tricky for a lot of reasons, and I think it's because each of us has structured our internal reality differently. And what I mean by structured, I mean the terms in which we think. If you talk to a musician, a boxer, and a pastry chef, they won't disagree on anything because they're thinking in totally different terms. In other words, there's no overlap because this one's thinking about how much salt I put in or how long it bakes, and this one's thinking about if I just punch a little harder. In other words, and yet when we try to talk to each other and we're thinking, now you and I are thinking in a lot of similar categories. That's why communication works.
Right.
You ask a lot of questions. A lot of those questions I have asked myself, so this isn't all new to me. Okay.
Right.
And in fact, like I said, I didn't want to come off as a know-it-all for already knowing the answers.
No, I think you came out brilliant. So I will say what you just thought of, and you brought up Neil deGrasse Tyson earlier, but he had this, I watched this recent video of him, I think it was on Diary of a CEO. It's very good. Maybe I'll put a link below. It was one of the best ones. I watch a lot of Neil deGrasse Tyson, but this one was like extra good.
Okay.
But he gave his dad credit on a quote, and I'm going to get this quote right because I think I have it right.
Okay.
And he's told young Neil deGrasse Tyson, he said, it's not enough to be right. You need to be effective. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And so the lesson that he took from that for Neil deGrasse Tyson was, in terms of messaging and reaching people where they're at and all those things, is like, well, I can be right about a subject, but if I can't be effective in my getting it out there, then it's pointless. And I thought that was pretty good. Okay. But we'll end on that. Lujan, thanks a lot for your time on the interview. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next time.